third in a series of webinars we are doing this year. This is John Taylor, Vice President of Sales with LightPointe. The first webinar was on FSO installation and best practices. The second was a live demo on the patented hybrid solution that combines both FSO and integrated RF wireless bridges called HyBridge. Today's webinar is a live demo of the LightPointe AireManager that manages across our portfolio of products, including the AireLite 100, AireLite G, AireStrata G, and HyBridge FSO systems, as well as our AireBeam low latency, low mirror wave products. The demo of the AireManager will be conducted by Brian Peterson with LightPointe Customer Service. Please type your questions throughout the session, and we will answer them at the end of the demo. Take it away, Brian.
Thank you, John. Yes, today we're going to talk about AireManager, which is our platform for all of our Air products. It's how we monitor and manage our units, and I will go through the various things that we can do with it. Most of what we do with the AireManager is based on the web browser. So we have a Java-based solution that allows us to monitor and manage our units. As you can see from this screenshot, this is from one of our FSO units. You can see the various things that we can take a look at. In the center you'll see our main screen with icons on the left. Each one of those icons opens up another box with various parameters for you to either look at and or modify. So the goal of the AireManager is to integrate a web browser functionality but also provide you built-in SNMP monitoring. You can see from the slide that most of our customers use it in the web browser format for programming, for making changes to the system, and then of course they use their SNMP and or syslog in order to monitor the unit, in order to not necessarily have their web browser open at all times, but just to get alerts if they should see any sort of issues or changes in the way that the system is operating. So here's the solution we have up in our hallway for what it is. We have mounted two HyBridge units, approximately 8 feet in the air, so that we don't interrupt them by walking through them or have them be in the way of our daily operations. So we have the FSO units with the backup radio. We have a camera which is pointing to the rear of one unit, and in the center image that you see here, the camera is pointing at this unit. This unit does not have access to our network until it reaches this side. So this is kind of a freestanding set of devices, the camera, the units, etc. They go into a switch, but that switch is not actually plugged into our network. The only way to access this information is via this remote side. So let's jump into the AireManager setup. So when you get your units, the first thing you need to do is program them. We recommend that you do this in your office or lab or space before you go ahead and actually deploy them in the air or on the roof. And the reason being is this way you can figure out all the little quirks, play with it here, see how it works, get an idea for it, configure it, and then go ahead and install it. Once you've made all your configurations and you have saved all of those configurations, you can then unplug the unit and it saves it into its non-volatile memory, so all those changes will be there the next time it powers up. So the first thing you need to do is plug your laptop into the input on the PoE injector, and then plug a cable from the output on the PoE injector into the PoE management port on your FSO or AireBeam product. Once you do that, the unit will take approximately 2 to 2.5 minutes in order to boot up and go through its entire boot sequence. Once it's done booting up, you'll go ahead and open up your web browser. Of course, you'll have to have your laptop or PC set to the 192.168.1 address scheme so that way you can access our web browser. And the other thing you do need to have is Java. So since we are Java based, we work with any machine running Java. We just have to make sure that you have Java loaded onto your laptop or PC. So if that hasn't happened prior to getting these plugged in, you'll want to go ahead and do that before you jump off the network or jump off your internet connection. So once you've put in the 192.168.1.115 into your web browser, you're going to get a little pop-up which is going to ask you to log in. So the default passwords are guest is guest, admin admin, and technician is tech. Pretty straightforward and standard stuff. These passwords can be changed through a telnet session, but out of the box, these are the passwords that we use. So once you've entered that, and I recommend that you go in either as the admin or the technician for programming purposes, you'll get the opening screen, which is again this slide we looked at earlier in the presentation. From here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the management icon. So that management icon, as you can see, is right here. And when you click on the management icon, it will open up a new window. And this window will allow you to go ahead and set your IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway. Also, if you were using SNMP and you have specific get and set communities, you'll need to go ahead and enter those here if you're going to be using SNMP. If you're not, then please go ahead and just leave them as public and private, all lowercase, as you see in the screenshot. So once you've gone ahead and you've changed your IP address, and here this is a unit that I have in our facility. This is the one closest to the camera. You can see I've changed it to .80. I've left the other two parameters the same. Once you've done that, you'll click on the Apply button, and then you'll get an OK to change, and you're going to say yes to that. Now, that change, while it is sitting in, how should we say, kind of a suspended animation, waiting until the unit is reset before that new IP address takes place. So in order to get the new IP address to take place, you need to go ahead and click on the system icon on the main screen, which is the top icon. This will open again another window. You're going to go down to the System Reset Restore and click on Reset Device. This is basically a software reset of the device itself that you're attached to. Once you've done that, you're going to go ahead and lose the connection. So there is a lag time in the web browser where the web browser is going to stay looking like it's active and everything is there, but that's just kind of a ghost. The actual unit is in the process of rebooting. After about 25 or 30 seconds of saying to reset the device, you're going to see a timeout screen on your laptop or PC. At that time, you'll know the unit is rebooting, and again, you'll see it on the back of the unit. You're going to see the lights are going to be blinking. It's going to be going through its boot sequence, and during this process, you will lose access to the unit through the web browser. Once I want to say about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes has gone by, you'll then need to reset your laptop or PC to the IP address scheme that you just set the unit to. And again, open a new browser session, input the new IP address, and you'll be back to the main screen, which is this screen. Now you've set the unit to be programmed for your IP address and available for your network or whatever network you're going to be installing it in. Now within the unit itself, you have additional configuration options. And one of those is in the management, which we were talking about here. You go back into the management section, you have your next set of options to take a look at. And that next set of options is the security. So by default, we set it to all ports. And that's because this way you're able to access the unit through either the data ports as kind of an in-band management solution, or through the input on the PoE injector, which is our out-of-band solution. But since we don't know how you're going to access it when you get it out of the box, we set it up so that all ports are available for accessing the unit. Now you do need to make some choices here. You can leave it as it is in all ports. You can set it, of course, to being out of band, which is your highest security, but also sometimes the most troublesome, because the only way to then access the unit is by connecting directly to the input on the PoE injector. You can also choose to set it to local only. And what that means is you will have in-band access through the data port, and it will be riding alongside the data. However, you'll only be able to access it on the side that it's located on. So if you are installing this unit on your headquarters side and you set the headquarter unit to local only, then only those people on the local side will have access to the unit. Nobody on the remote side will. Now we have another option which is called remote only. Again, this is in-band, and remote only was designed and created for customers who have a situation like an ISP, or maybe it's a highly secure environment where they don't want the people having access to it. A good example would be a situation where, let's say, for me, I have Time Warner Cable as my ISP. Well, Time Warner Cable is accessing my router and my modem for information, but they don't want me to have access to it. So it would be similar where you would set up this unit to be remote only, meaning only those people remotely have access to see the unit, but the people locally do not have access. So that's another option. In other words, if you work in a secure environment and you're on the headquarters side, but you don't want anybody in the remote building having any access, you would set the remote building to be remote only, which may sound kind of backwards, in which case only headquarters has access to the information on the remote unit. We also have VLAN ID tagging, which is for the management in this case. We're not talking about the data, we're talking about the management. So if you're going to set all of your management, or if in your network you have set all the management to a certain VLAN ID, you can go ahead and add this to that VLAN. Now, once you do that, unless you enable the VLAN, then it's not going to change anything. So you can set the VLAN ID to whatever you want to, but if you never go to VLAN enable, then you're not actually enabling that VLAN ID to be active. But you do need to be aware, if you do click on VLAN enable and you've made a mistake, then getting into recover has to be done through the out-of-band management port. So just to kind of, if you're doing VLAN tagging and VLAN IDs, you probably are comfortable with this process, but if you're not, then I wouldn't go down that step, because you could lock yourself out and not even realize it. Other options within the configuration of the management is your trap destinations. If you're going to be using SNMP, then you can enter the IP addresses for your SNMP monitoring. Also syslog. So if you are going to be doing a syslog situation, you can go ahead and enter the IP address of your syslog server. So let me recap that real briefly here. Let me slide this over. And so here's a live view of our camera. You can see the little lights are blinking. Got the roll-up doors are open. We've got new orders lined up, ready to ship out today. And we have 2 units active. This is the roll-up door side, and then we have the JT office side. For those of you who know John Taylor, that's how I identify this as closer to his office. So as I mentioned, you can go into the management, and when you open up that management, you can see I do purely in-band management, so there is nothing connected to the input on my PoE injector. I am set to all ports. We do not use VLAN ID tagging, so it's got a generic number in there, 3000, and you can see it is disabled. You can also see the IP address that I mentioned. I do have, although I'm not going to be showing this today, I do have SNMP monitoring. This is my computer's IP address, so I can do trap destinations. And I also have my syslog server on this machine. So setting up your management is fairly easy. You can see the apply button here. Once you click on it, I haven't done anything here, so if I go ahead and I change this to say 2000, you can see it turns blue when you make a change, and then if you click apply, it pops up with the new configurations we'll be setting to the device. Are you sure? You can go ahead and click yes. Refresh just refreshes this particular screen. When you're done, you close it. And we also talked about how you go into the system and you click on System, Reset, Restore. Be aware there's two different options here. There's Restore the factory defaults, and then there's Reset the device. When you're done programming it, that's where you go ahead and you reset the device. Don't restore the factory defaults. That won't change your IP addresses and could cause confusion. So looking at the next set of configurations, you've now set the IP address, you've now rebooted it, and now we are coming back in to look at other options that we can change if we need to, which would be in the FSO view. So between management and FSO view, that's where you make a majority of your changes, alterations, configurations are all done within those two icons primarily. So within this configuration, the next thing you need to do, if you purchased it as a HyBridge solution or a dual path if you have the millimeter wave product, both of which come with that backup radio option, then you need to come into the FSO view and you need to go ahead and you need to configure the network interface configuration. So you'll know what kind of system you have. Let's say you have a HyBridge SXR or SXR5. That's where you're going to see it here. It's going to show HyBridge. If all you purchased was just a standard AireLite G, then your configuration is going to show standard here. When you install this unit on your bench, you're not going to have any incoming signal, so your RSSI level is actually going to show 0. And down here where it says loss of signal normal, it's actually going to say alarm. And it's going to say that because, of course, you have no incoming signal and you're in loss of signal. So there's a couple other things you can change. Now at the factory, what we've done is we've pre-configured the RSSI low and the RSSI high to 250 and 300 millivolts. That equates to approximately 2 bars of signal strength for the low and 3 bars of signal strength for the high. And why we did that is we want to avoid flapping. We also don't want to wait till the unit is down below 1 bar of signal strength, because then you could get some bit errors or you could get some packet loss when you get below 1 bar but not quite to loss of signal. So with a HyBridge solution, we want it to fail over to the backup radio before it gets to the bottom, but we don't want it to come back immediately. What if we have a situation where it's a heavy rain pattern, or maybe it's a fog where it's kind of coming and going? Well, we want to make sure that we have enough signal strength to avoid a flapping situation, because that doesn't help the network at all. So we set it at 300. So these are only really applicable for SNMP traps and also for the triggering of the HyBridge backup solution. So if you change these, some people set these too high. So if you set the RSSI high, let me take a look at this as a direct example. So right now my unit shows 733 as its best signal strength. If I set my RSSI high at 700, that means I won't come back to the FSO, the high-speed solution, until my RSSI hits 700. Well, that's too high a number. You don't want it to come back that late. You want it to come back as quickly as possible. So you need to either leave the numbers where they're at, or if you make adjustments, keep them understanding that you want it to come back as soon as possible, so you're running on the FSO as much as possible. The next things that we configure in this, or have available for configuration, and this is for, again, the HyBridge, you need to do this. You need to set your wireless failover master on one side and wireless failover remote on the other side. If you don't do that, and you leave these systems in all ports, which is the default, then you will set your system into a loop and you will crash your network. So it's important that you configure these before you get them on the roof and attach all the radios. One side needs to be wireless failover master, the other needs to be wireless failover remote. Also, you're going to have a backup radio if you have a HyBridge solution. Depending on the radio that you have, you need to set the secondary port throughput at the maximum throughput available for your specific radio. So if you already have an existing radio that you're going to be using, and that's, let's say it's a 54 meg radio, well then you want to keep your secondary throughput at around 54 meg. If you have some other radio that is a higher throughput radio, set it for that number. We also have put into the latest revisions of the software quality of service. So if you're using QoS on your network, we do have QoS now available on the FSO systems. So some of the other features that you can go to are the system view, the software, and the statistics. Now for software and statistics, statistics is basically just a view. You can't alter anything or change anything other than to clear out all the numbers and start over again. And the system view is really designed to allow you to look at information about the unit. Same thing with software. Although in the software, should we have a software firmware release that you would like to take advantage of, in this section of the software you are able to upload the new firmware or content files. And I'll show you more about that in just a moment. So coming back here, let's take a look at the FSO view to start with. So as you can see, I'm at 746 right now. When I took the screenshots earlier, I was at 733. You can also see here if the heater is on or off, and you can set the heater threshold. So if you are in a hot and humid environment, you may want to up this a little bit so that the heater comes on a little bit earlier. If you're in a less humid, hot and humid environment, 25°C is a perfect temperature. Here's our SFP. Again, there's no configurations other than if you wanted to turn it off for some reason, you could do that. And if you wanted to do flow control for some reason. Since our units are gigabit throughput, there's really no need to do flow control because we do gigabit full duplex, so you don't need to worry about that. You can see the status of the unit right now. It's connected, it's up, it's on. Here's information about the SFP that's in that unit. The RJ45, which you can see is in a link down activity no traffic, and the reason that it is down and no traffic is that I have good signal strength up here, and until I get to below 250 millivolts, it won't fail over. You can also see that here I've got it set to wireless failover master. Now if I click on my other unit and I click on the FSO, and you can see I've now switched to number 81. And once again, I go down here to the network interface. You can see that it is in the remote. A little side note on the way this works is the remote side is always on the copper, always in up and on ready. So the radio is always in a ready state on the remote side. It's the master side that will click in and turn on when the unit needs to move to that backup solution. And you can see here, here's your options. When it comes to you out of the box, because these units are interchangeable, they're not set to one side as a high, one side as a low, like our millimeter wave. In the FSO, both are exactly the same. We deliver them to you as add-drop, meaning that both the primary and the secondary ports are on and available to transmit. And that's why when you connect the radios, if you haven't set to wireless failover master and wireless failover remote on your two units, you're going to create a loop and crash your network. So again, if you're using QoS, here's where you would set those parameters. And you can see here, if you wanted to, you can also put your IP radio information. As I mentioned, we also talked about the system. The system view, again, allows you to put in information. So these first three pieces of information are what show up here at the top of the main screen. If you want to see what the current temperature of your unit is, it's right here. So our units indoors are running at 52 C, internal temperature, not external. That would be really hot in the hallway. If you call up and you don't have the information handy, in the system information section, you can see the serial number, which will then, when you call in for any sort of trouble or questions, allows me to know both the production date, and it also allows me to look it up to see where we shipped it, when we shipped it, and get that kind of information. Also, for some reason, if we need to send out an update or we have a problem, we can go ahead and take a look at the various MAC addresses, hardware revisions, etc. to figure out if your unit was affected. As you can see, I didn't do this, but if you are installing this for someone else, it's a nice idea to put in your installation information. That way you have it here. Also, a lot of installers will go ahead and put in information like call me as the installer for problems or questions. They do that up here also. So anyone who pops in here for information knows who to contact in case of an emergency. We've already covered this part, but here's your device reset and restore. And this one is one that should only be used if you are setting up a test environment out in the field. It puts the unit into loopback, but if you don't remember to take it out of loopback, then you'll lock up your system. So again, this is part of our ISP requirements, is to have loopback available. We talked about the software. So here's where you can see the software that you're currently loaded on your units. And should you want to upload, if there is a new software revision that you'd like to upload, that would be done here. You'd put the file name, and again, you need to have a TFTP server set up in order to upload the new firmware and software, so you'd need to input your TFTP address. For me, I installed from my machine, so that's my IP address. And then we also talked about the statistics. So here you can see all the various statistics about the unit. If you wanted to know, if I go back to my system view, you can see that the last time we reset this was 7 days, 6 hours, and 23 minutes. And that's where these statistics are coming from the last 7 days. I am in the technician mode right now, and in the technician mode, You can also see CRCs, drop events, etc. And I will switch back quickly here to, whoops, sorry, wrong button. In the admin mode, we just give you the core information that's vital. You can also see that we have green bars indicating whether we have a lot of drop packets, and we're looking good and running beautifully. Okay. So as I mentioned, we also have SNMP available built into the units. We do ship with it a MIB library that you can then put into your specific unit, into your specific SNMP software package, and then you have your SNMP capabilities. This is just a view of it here. There's the tree. Here's an example of some of the ringer consoles. This happens to be from MGSoft, which is a software that we happen to use. And that kind of brings us to the configuration of the AireManager software. Are there any questions? John, you still there? Maybe I've lost John.
I am. Thanks, Mike, for doing that. While we have everybody type in their questions there, I just want to mention that throughout June we continued our 5 nines for 5 nines promotion, which is our combination of AireLite G and integrated radio. So that's the HyBridge SXR5. It's normally $12,000, and it's through June $10,000. It's $9,999. 5 nines for 5 nines, and that's through June. All our webinars are recorded on YouTube, including this one being recorded. So if you were late getting into it, you can go to YouTube a little bit later on in the day or tomorrow and catch up on what you missed, or you can refer this to one of your technical buddies. And if we have any questions out there, please type them in there, and we'll do it. I got one from Harvey. Harvey is asking, so if I don't have SNMP, how do I can I get in there and manage the system?
Sure. SNMP really is just a method of taking in and having it alert you to things without necessarily having your browser open. But obviously all this information is available through the browser, so if you are seeing anything on your network, you can go ahead and just open the browser and take a look at the various attributes. Typically I would have you open it up and take a look at the statistics and make sure that we are still seeing transmissions and receptions on both the data ports as well as through the FSO ports. Or you can get a syslog server. We use this TFT PD64, and this actually has a syslog server built into it. So if you want to just run a syslog server like this, you'll get your alerts this way. You just have to have this up and running on your machine at all times. You can just have it in the background. It's a great way to capture all of the little various, if there are any blips or anything that happens, it'll show up on the syslog server.
Okay, are there any other questions? So I have a question from Awad. We just want to ask about the effect of sunlight. As you know, he's in an arid climate. He wants to know about sunlight affecting FSO systems. They're hitting it. So just a question about it. Yeah.
Well, the only times we see issues with sunlight and FSO is if you are in a direct east-west configuration, and that would be pretty rare. But what you can do is, instead of necessarily shooting directly east-west, you can typically go kitty corner. So you can create an angle, and if you create an angle, because of our limited field of view, the way the units are designed, they're very narrow beams, very narrow vision. You will avoid any sunlight disturbances. The other ways that you would see it, and you may want to take a look at our FSO mounting video and take a look at that, because there are some other ways of mitigating or reducing any sort of sunlight issues.
Okay, good. Thanks. Are there any other questions out there? Well, we had a really good crowd, and I appreciate everybody's time. Brian, thank you again. Again, this webinar, as well as our other webinars, and also product overviews, are on our YouTube channel, and it's listed there in Brian's slide. If you got any questions, you can certainly contact Brian or myself, and we'll certainly get the answers to you that's specific to your application.
John,
again, thanks for joining us.
John, let me throw in one more thing which I had neglected at the very early part of this is when you first log into the unit, you're going to see a welcome screen. And when you see that welcome screen, you'll see that on units shipped after March 1st, if you register your unit, you get a free second year of standard warranty. So anybody who has purchased their unit who happens to be on this after March 1st, don't ignore that opening screen. Fill out the registration form, send it in, and then that way you are automatically enrolled in a second year of warranty. So, sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier, John.
That's a good point. I really did that, Brian. Thank you very much. Well, again, we're going to wrap up here. Looks like our time is up, and we do appreciate everybody's participation, and you can catch this webinar and others on our YouTube channel. Thanks again. Thanks for joining us.